And I always say, how did I get from not shooting athletes to shooting $100 million athletes? How did that go from, because people say, how do I go and make that leap, right? And I say, well, first of all, you have to shoot more athletes than anyone that you know.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the latest episode of the Beyond the Image podcast. I'm your host, James Patrick, and I'm sitting with photographer, educator, and all-around swell fella, Joel Grimes. How's it going, sir?
Pretty good, thank you.
Well, thanks for having us in your amazing, amazing home, for welcoming us in, and this is such a great setup you have here.
Well, it is, and it's like when you work in a closet and then you get a little more room, it's kind of nice, right? So, this is where I do all my tutorials, or at least the ones that I'm, kind of like the Photoshop or talking in front of the lens. It's done right here in this space. So
that's amazing. It's a great space. Now, you and I, we had talked years ago, and at the time you were starting to build this new interest, which was educating other photographers, helping teach photographers what it is that you do. And I'm kind of curious to dive into, what was the inspiration behind wanting to work with others, want to help others? Where did that come from for yourself?
Well, even back in my Denver days, I always had an open door to my studio.
Mm-hmm.
People, I've been around a while. I just turned 61, so I've been through this. But in the 80s, when I started out, photographers were not very free in sharing information. It was mums with the word. You'd go up to a photographer that was successful and you say, hey, I love that picture. What light modifier did you use? They would not tell you.
And why do you think that is?
Because back then it was, there's an explosion of the digital and, YouTube and all that, where you're sharing information. So all the information is out there now. But back then it was like the secret sauce. And I realized something early on, that if I, let's just, for example, was to impute into you, even if I could, all my information that I know, all my skill set, everything into your brain, and we just go like, zip, you still couldn't be me. Mm-hmm. And there's this big problem that most photographers are not, they miss the big picture, which is the more hours you put into it, the greater your end result will be. So it's how many hours you put into honing your craft. So I have always been a very hard worker. I've put in the time. And so I learned early on that if I said, hey, I used a softbox, here's how far I put it from my subject, blah, 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 that's not a threat to me.
Yeah.
And so I've always had an open door. And then when I started doing that 3 edgy light sports kind of thing, and I always say, how did I get from not shooting athletes to shooting $100 million athletes? How did that go from, because people say, how do I go and make that leap, right? And I say, well, first of all, you have to shoot more athletes than anyone that you know.
Yep.
You got to repeat it more than anyone else that you know on the planet. And so the 3 light approach that I did, kind of grungy, Photoshop techniques I was learning at the time, I started putting out there. Well, first I had this assistant. He said, "You should put this out like on Flickr or something." And I didn't even know what Flickr was. And when I say that, I know that sounds weird because now we know all these social media platforms. And I was like, "What's Flickr?" I thought, and I think maybe heard the name. So I said, "Okay, I'll set up an account." And again, I'm not very savvy with all that stuff. I'm like, oh, "Okay, well, how do we do this?" And then started putting work on there, and people were like, "Oh my God, this is incredible. How are you doing this?" And I'm like, well, and I'd explain it every time I was typing it out. So I told my assistant, I said, "Thanks a lot. I got all this, I'm typing in all this, answering all these people's." He goes, "Oh, well, you need a blog." A blog? I heard the, blog, but I was like, I don't want to have a blog. Like, I thought a blog was where you every day you sit down and you post something and then people ask questions and it's this dialogue. I go, that's what I'm doing now. I don't want a dialogue. He goes, no. You put down like a general thing. Here's how I did this. Maybe it'd be behind the scenes. This is, And so I said, okay, I'll put a blog together. So, and I named it, I think it was Joel Grimes Workshops. I didn't know. I wasn't really doing any workshops at the time, but I thought, well, I'll just.
The name seemed to fit.
And all of a sudden, I put this little counter on there and I was getting, hundreds of thousands of people. And I didn't know what that meant. People say, how many people are going to your blog? I'm like, I don't know. The numbers are like, 100,000 a month or 200,000 a month. They're like, seriously? And this is what, 10 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
And I go, I don't know where they're coming from. I didn't even understand how that marketplace worked, and all of a sudden that first invite came. Hey, can you come speak at our event? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And then my first one was an Arizona PPA event. I did it down in Tucson, and then someone was there that also were part of the decision making for another event. Then I went to that event, and next thing I knew, I was doing 45 events a year.
Mm-hmm.
So it just kind of fell in my lap. I always thought I could teach, but it wasn't like I thought, oh, I want to teach. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand the market at the time. I fell into it because Kelby Training, now Kelby One, they were doing online training. And I remember signing up for that. And I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. And I remember even watching it thinking, I could probably teach that. But it wasn't like, oh, that's my goal, right? And then I started doing workshops, personal workshops, and then Matt Kowalski from Kelby One came out, and I knew him. I'd seen him, but I was like, he just said, hey, can I come check you out on one of your workshops? Like, fine. And then after he left, he like 2 days later called me and said, Scott wants you to come and be a part of the instructor team here. I was like, you're kidding me. I never thought that would be possible. And then, it just kept building Creative Live. And then, it's a weird thing. Now, let's say I hired a PR firm to say, let's get Joel out there in the marketplace in the teaching arena, and it's going to cost you $1 million. I don't think they could have done, today, what happened back then, because I was at the very beginning of it all, and I just was at the right time in history.
And I would also add to that, like there was a lot of, you were in the right place at the right time, but you were also doing the right work. And had you not set up that blog, people would not have found the blog.
That's right.
Had people not found the blog and you not spoke at that first event,
That's right.
Someone else would not have heard it.
Yeah.
So whether it was through intention or just through, this seems like the right thing to do at this moment, which it seems like it was the latter, like, yeah, this seems like the right thing to do. I'll give this a try. You were still putting in the work, and you were still doing the work. You were still sharing. You're still putting information out there, and you're putting it out at a time when so many people were looking for exactly what you were willing to put out. And there's that adage that, luck is like a bus, and another one's coming, but sometimes you just have to have the fare to get on. And it seems like doing the work for you is what got you on that bus.
Yeah. And I was always open, right, from day one about what I did, right? So I wasn't hiding anything. So when it came time, even before the flood of YouTube and all that, I was sharing everything. And people were like, wow, why would you give all this away? It's like, because no one's a threat to me. Mm-hmm. Only the person that's a threat. In fact, even now today, I'm teaching all my stuff, and people come up and they'll say, hey, check this out. I got I watched your video. Here's this picture. I'm like, whoa, that's really good. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, that's better than my picture. But in the back of my head I go, the odds are they can't outwork me. Mm-hmm. That's the one thing I've got, is that the ability to outwork them. And so we can talk more about that, about building a series, a body of work of repeating the same subject over and over again, to where you have not just one really cool picture of a Harley rider, you have a whole 100 days of shooting Harley riders. Mm-hmm. That body of work, that intense ability, or that concentrated effort to go after one thing over and over and over again, you become an expert at something. And no school can teach you that. Mm-mm. No tutorial can teach you that. Like say, even if I zapped you with my knowledge, by you going out there and repeating it, making mistakes, fumbling through, and then finally at the end of it, you go, I kind of figured this out, right? Because I've repeated it so many times. So that's my strength. I always say my strength is not the ability. I'm not a creative genius, but I have a passion for the creative process. And I know I have one thing, that is, if I put in the time, the hours, the hard work, I will have a greater end result, and I will have a greater ability to position myself in the marketplace.
We're at a very interesting time right now, where today information at scale is free. Mm-hmm. You can, anyone can jump on YouTube right now and learn everything there is to know about how to make photos that look identical to yours, from
right.
the pre-production, the production, the post-production.
Right.
Okay, so they can make the identical image,
Right.
but you hit the nail right on the head. There's so many other facets to growing a brand, to growing a career within any industry, but particularly within a creative industry. And it's, how good are you at building relationships? How much are you willing to hustle? How much are you willing to pick up that phone? How much are you willing to knock on that door? How much are you willing to shoot the same thing over and over and over again? How much are you willing to be disciplined to create something that is new and unique and completely yours? So I'm curious for yourself, because this has been a recurring beat for you throughout your career, is you have been consistent. You do put in the work. You are willing to go that extra step. Where did that come from for you? Because that, like you said, that's not something that's taught in school. So I'm curious, because even today, you seem very curious to always learn something new, to always try something new, and always willing to then explore that curiosity and then apply it. So I'm curious, where did that come from for yourself in your career?
Well, I think it's a couple things. One is, if you're really smart and you go through your classes, you go from your grade school, middle school, high school, college, and you're always getting A's. I mean, it comes pretty easy for you, right? Then maybe you work hard for A's, but let's just say you don't have to. You're just brilliant from birth. Generally, those people aren't the ones that end up rocking the world. It's the ones. This is a really interesting study that in the workplace, in the world of people that are making things happen, the movers and the shakers, that generally they're C students. They're not A. Most A students end up working for C students in the real world.
That's fascinating.
Because C students generally have to really work hard to keep up.
Mm-hmm.
And that work ethic of struggling and saying, especially in an academic structure or environment, I was terrible. The ability to grasp something that someone just slap on a chalkboard and say, here's the definition of something, and then go on to the next thing. I'm like, wait. I'm missing that. Can you slow down? And so I've had to struggle to survive. And I didn't come from a family that gave me everything. My first car I had to earn. I paid the insurance. I paid the gas. I paid everything for that first car. It's a $300 car, but back in 1975, that was not, $300, right? Most of my college I paid for. And so it wasn't that my dad didn't love me. It's just that, they had limited resources. So I had to earn everything. It took me 6.5 years to get through my 4-year degree because I had to paint houses. I worked construction. I rebuilt my engines on my car. I had Volkswagens. I didn't take my car to a mechanic until I was 40 years old. I did everything, brakes, everything on and that's just my life has always been this. I have to get it done. I have to work, and there's a downside to that because when I come into a situation where I have resources and my wife's like, why are you still working on your car? You don't need to work on that anymore. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, but because I can do it. Why don't you hire someone to edit your videos? Well, I can do this. Well, you don't have time for it. But, so I have to let go. It's hard to let go of certain things, but it's that ability to, or that I guess mindset that I have to earn my way through life. Nothing's going to be really being given to me. That doesn't mean I haven't had breaks. That doesn't mean I had someone come along and say, hey, Joel, you know what? I'm going to help you out. Mm-hmm. I've had that situation. Breaks, I say breaks, but opportunities that came in just like, wow, But for the most part, I've had to fight for it. Now, this is an interesting thought. When I teach, I say there's no such thing as a stupid question, right? That's a good way to teach. And I teach at a very simple, I explain it, over-explain things because I don't want anyone to get lost. But when I go and I explain things, and then I get 40,000 emails a year, and people ask questions all the time, which is fine. I like to answer questions, but a good percentage of the questions that I'm getting asked are questions that you should go out and figure out the answer for yourself. So you ask, why have I been up and motivated and creating trends and doing all these things for all these years? Is because one of the things that I do is I don't wait for someone else to figure out the answer to something and then pass that on to me. I go out and figure it out. High speed sync. How does it work? I'm going to go out there and figure it out. And then I fumble, make a lot of mistakes. And then I go and put it together and do something. And people go, that is brilliant. And I go, well, no, actually, I just walked through the problem. And I've spoke at top schools, photography schools, and they have some pretty darn amazing instructors. But I come in with something and they go, we have never seen that before. It's like, because you are stuck in a bubble. I'm out here going, what would that happen if I did this? What would happen if I did that? And so I'm not waiting for someone to solve my questions. I'm out there. And so when someone says to me, hey, high speed sync, how does it work? And I go, well, I can explain that. I have videos that explain that, whatever. But here, go out and just shoot it.
Mm-hmm.
Go put your camera on and your strobe on high speed sync and see what happens. Solve it.
Yeah.
And then you'll learn more than by just watching my tutorial.
Do you think, like, and I'm going to use this example of, someone coming up to you at a conference, they ask a question like, how do you do high speed sync? Or they drop an email to you. Do you find that people are just looking for like an answer that they feel is going to be their golden ticket to like opening their eyes up to everything?
I think we're always looking for a shortcut.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just natural. Our human nature says, well, if there's a shortcut, let me find it. I think what happens is people they're missing that one ingredient of a piece of the pie that says, I have to repeat that process 1,000 times. So I'll give you an example. And I used this in the past. When I was doing my composites, no one taught me how to do composites. I had to learn it myself. And there was a few tutorials out there, but again, back then there wasn't anything that was really, that informative. I had to go in there and drop a subject out of a background, go and put them in a from a sweep and then drop them in a background and make it look real. And my first stuff was terrible. And some of the stuff I look back now is not that good. But the fact is I had to learn that. And I had to I call it selling the fake. Keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. Well, after about 300 or 500 composites, you get pretty darn good. So people come up to me and they say, hey, here's my first composite. What do you think? And I say, that's better than my first composite. And I go, do me a favor. Go and do 300 composites. And on your 300th one, you email it to me and I'll critique it for you. And I've been saying that for 8 years and not one person's come up to me or sent me a 300th email or a 300 composite. And there's two reasons why. One is they never got there. Two is by the time I get there, they don't care about me anymore. They don't care what Joel thinks because they're an expert now. Mm-hmm. Why would they go and ask Joel what I think when they're like rocking the world, right? So it's like once you get to a certain level, you don't need critiquing anymore. You don't need someone to say, oh, you know what? Look, there's a pole growing out of someone's head. You've already solved that problem. You've already gone through that, mistake. So I think that's what most people don't understand is that you got to go out and beat something in the ground until it becomes second nature, do it in your sleep, and you can rock the world with it. And they want the quick shortcut to it. They don't want to put in the hard work.
You've mentioned a couple times in your journey that you've had to fail a tremendous amount to get to where you are. There's an aversion and a fear people have with failure. But I think the guy sitting next to me, you seem to still be alive after failing so much, and you seem to be doing really well after failing so much. What do you think the aversion we have to failure is, and what does it require? What is that grit that we need to be willing to fail again and again and again until finally we get something that works?
Well, see, most of us are fairly sensitive. We're really weak, fragile, insecure. I go through that whole thing when I talk about marketing. We're weak, fragile, insecure human beings. We're human. So I always say, what's the greatest thing that keeps me from moving forward? My humanity. My humanity is the same thing with, we all know how to lose weight, folks. You diet and exercise, and you can package that up 1,000 ways. It still takes someone to say, I'm got a goal. I want to lose 50 pounds or whatever it is, 15 pounds. And you have to go and dedicate yourself to that. And it's not easy. In fact, it's a lot harder to lose 15 pounds than it is to gain 15 pounds. So it's just our human nature that says, whatever, getting out of bed and going to the gym or whatever. When it comes to being a photographer or a musician or an actor or whatever it is, you pick anything out there, right? You're going to have to hit the real world. And in the real world, it's an interesting thing. There's a lot of people that are trying to do the same thing you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So, You get a casting call for like, even with like when I do a casting call, I've had casting calls. We've had 100 people show up for one slot. It's a lot of people trying to get one position. And so what happens is I'm looking for a specific look, or a director for a movie is looking for a specific actor look. You can walk in, you be 10 times the actor, but you don't have that look.
Mm-hmm.
So they go, no, next. And you go, I'm crushed, right? Well, why are you crushed? You're a really good actor. Well, I got rejected. So it's really the fear of rejection more than I actually think the fear of failure. The fear of failure is there, and it does happen. But I think anyone that really looks at it knows that if I go and learn how to juggle, at first, I'm not going to do very good, right? So I know how to juggle 2 balls. I've never gotten to 3, but I know that if I practice, I get to 3 balls. And at some point I could get 4 balls and then 5. And then pretty soon you got a show in Vegas because you've put in all that time practicing. Mm-hmm. And so it's, again, it goes back to people think, well, I can do it in, 2 weeks. I can learn how to juggle. No, it takes 10 years to be at a show in Vegas. It takes 10 years. And I think that, we don't project out that far of a game plan. And so if you say to me, Joel, I want to be a speaker, teaching around the world. I want to go to Italy, and I've been on European tours now. And you say, what is that going to take? I can give you a layout, but it's going to take you about 7 years to 10 years to get there.
I think for so much of people, they have to be willing, not only to fail, but willing to be imperfect, and I've said this, like sometimes you just have to suck. Yeah. And you have to suck at first. Like when I first started blogging, it was probably about 15 years ago. My first blog's not that good. Jay, who's filming this, we started podcasting probably 8 or 9 years ago. Our first podcast, not that good. My first photographs, not that good. Just like your first composite, probably not that good, but you figure it out. The issue is when you hold back on it, you don't ever put it out there because then you never get feedback. Like if you just kept your blog in a Microsoft Word processor and you never published it, it never would have been seen. Despite how bad it may have been, it never would have been seen. You have to be willing to be out in the market and have people give you feedback so you can know what to change, what to improve, what to stay curious about.
Here's an interesting thought. And I just spoke with my wife, Amy, about this yesterday or day before. And that is when you, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's the photography source books. Mm-hmm. It used to be the Black Book. Mm-hmm. I think it's maybe still around, but and I know Workbook's still around. Workbook, big old thick book. Yep. Ad Edge, I'm involved in Ad Edge. Right now, my work is in Ad Edge. But you pay to get in there, and there's a whole bunch of photographers. Now, Ad Edge, they keep it to 150 photographers, but like Workbook would get like 400, 500 photographers. And I'd put my $8,000 in. You had to wait and finally get it, and you open it up. And I remember this experience, this emotional experience that would happen is you flip through the page and you go, "Oh my God, look at these great photographers!" Right? And you come along, and finally you get to your page, and you go, and your heart almost skips a beat because you've seen the picture, but now it's laying in this book, and you go, "Well, that's not that good."
Yep.
And then you go, how am I going to survive with all these 500 photographers in here? Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. So there's 2 responses that you can have to that. One is you say, I can never compete. I'm done. Or you look at it and you go, I'm going to work harder because I want to compete. Mm-hmm. And I've always had I'm going to work harder because I want to compete. I mean, I've had that moment of like clarity of, wow, this is not as good as the other work in this book. And, and so, I'm like, but I have to, my brain always goes to the get better, not the I quit. And I think that's important to understand is that part of that might be my personality, but I think it's also the fact that I went through sports, did a lot of sports stuff. It's like, I can compete. There's that positive reinforcement in my mind that I can compete. I just have to work harder at it. And so, and I know that I'm not the most naturally talented person on the planet. So I have to say, I will get to my end result. I just may take me a little longer. But I think that I think there's people that they quit just like that. Once the first time they come across and they go, I'm not good enough, I quit.
It's interesting because I think there's a misperception of courage. Like, oh, I wish I had the courage to share my work like you do. I wish I had the grit to do what you do. And the reality is anyone can do this. Literally anyone can make these imagery. Anyone can go out, shop their book around, give a client a call, try to do something that hasn't been done before. So it can be done. The question is, will it be done? And when I talk to people, like, say, I wish I had the courage to be able to do that, or the confidence to be able to do that. What I've learned in close to 20 years of taking photos and approaching clients and doing things that don't work is I never have the courage beforehand. I never do. I get terrified when I go to do something for the first time, every single time. But I have hindsight to know that even if it doesn't work, I'll be fine. And then after I try it, regardless of whether I succeed or fail, then the courage shows up or the confidence shows up to be like, oh yeah, you did okay on that,
I think one of the things that we also look at confidence, and we tie it to talent or ability, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've said this many times. When a $100 million athlete steps in front of me and it's like they give me 15 minutes and the pressure's on and people say, are you nervous? And I say, not if I'm doing what I do every day. Not if I do the Joel Grimes approach that I've done, 3 lights or whatever.
Yep.
Because I've repeated it so many times. My confidence does not come with my ability, but in the fact that I've practiced it more than anyone on the planet. That's where my confidence comes in. And so, and they also, when I teach lighting, I know this is kind of an interesting thing. Not that I'm making a plug for my lighting tutorials, but I do a lot of teaching on lighting. People love my lighting stuff. And the reason why I like teaching it is because lighting is a mystery. And there are so many scenarios, so many variables that when you get in the real world, the lighting technique that's used in studio, all of a sudden in this one big atrium with whatever is not the same, or outdoors is not the same. So all these variables can throw you for a loop. Mm-hmm. Literally, you can be standing there going, oh my God, and your blood pressure is like going up, and the art director's going, let's go. We got very little time. And so when I teach lighting, what happened is that most people learn lighting from a technical perspective. Lighting ratios, they look at schematics, put a light and measure 3 feet from the subject, whatever. And so then when they get in the real world, they get thrown for a loop because now they're in a situation where they can't put the light over here. Now they need an edge light, but how do they put that edge light up? What distance do I put it? They're gonna get thrown for a loop. If you learn from a technical perspective and you got the formula, you will become undone. But if you learn from what I call the intuitive, emotional feelings approach to lighting. That is, you put a subject up, you bring that light in, and you go, does it look right? Mm-hmm. You take a picture and you go, no, it doesn't look. Why? Well, the edge light's too hot. Why is it too hot? Well, it's blowing out. Well, okay, what do I do to that? Well, you turn it down. Maybe you get a little bit bigger modifier. Maybe it's too harsh. Soften it up. And I know all the ways to do that. Now, I didn't for years, but I learned how to do that. So now on the fly, when an art director says, I like that, except that edge light's too harsh, I know like that how to make it softer. No hesitation, no bumps, whatever. And I've had many art directors and producers, whatever, at the end of a shoot say, we've never had a photographer that can move as quickly at making decisions as you. And it's not because, again, of my talent of natural abilities or creative genius, whatever you want to call it. It's because I've worked through the hours. I know how to make something by intuition. I know how to solve the problem very quickly. And so that gives me confidence. So when a $100 million athlete walks in front of me, I'm like, no problem. I got this. And I've had most art directors, are you sure? They're nervous. I'm not so nervous. Now, it doesn't mean I never get nervous, but you know what I'm saying. I get in front of people now all the time. I'm never nervous speaking in front of people. Now, when I first started, oh my gosh. I remember the very first time that first workshop I did for Arizona PPA. I did a little shoot and I got through that, and then I brought it over and they wanted to see how I retouched. And I put my laptop up and the lights went down. There was 100 people in the room. And I don't know if you've ever had this where the room goes, Like
Just
it's just
tilts on its
just
axis
like,
a bit.
It's like my brain, the blood wasn't going there or something. And I'm staring at my computer and I'm like, what do I do? I couldn't remember. Oh, I got a card. I need to put the card in and get the file and open it up. I mean, my brain just froze because I was nervous. And I tell people that happens when you first, you force yourself to go into something that's uncomfortable. But and then the next, time I got a bigger group, I got a little nervous. The bigger group, but eventually it's like, no, you get in front of people. I don't even think about it. I'll have an event. There'll be 1,000 people, and I don't even think. There's no nerves, nothing, because I've done it so many times, and I'm confident in my message that I can present it to them, and that comes with practice.
And it's absolutely right. It does come from practice. I can remember the most nervous I ever was presenting to a group, and it was ironic because I was pretending to present poorly, and I was just trying to make a point where I walked up in front of the group and I immediately dropped all my notes on the floor, and then I lost my place. I couldn't get the pages in the right order. I was fumbling, and I was making a point of how you present yourself. Right. That made me nervous. It made me nervous because I'm used to just being so polished, like knowing when I want to say something, how I want to say it. So to have to pretend to mess up, like actually started throwing me off my game. So when I tried to recover, it took a few beats to get back onto it.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, you do presentations, it seems like all the time. You're on the road a lot. You're presenting a lot. What do you take away most when you're presenting to an audience? What do you get? What do you feel out of that?
Well, the number one thing is that when I was 19 years old and I was sitting at Pima Community College under Lou Bernal, he was the teacher at the time, professor out there, and he sparked an interest in me to be an artist, to chase my dream of being a photographer. And I remember that I was so excited. I remember it was like I discovered gold at the end of the rainbow. And I've been chasing it ever since, or at least living that dream ever since. I want that to happen to someone in the audience. I want someone to go, I can do this. I get emails all the time. People say, I was discouraged, and then I heard you speak, and I feel like now I can move forward. And I go, okay, I've done my job. If I can move someone forward to achieve their dream, then I've done my job. And so I'm really just a life coach. In fact, let's say, for example, you said, Joel, I'm coming to town on my private Learjet, and I want an hour of your time. And I say, well, that's going to be $10,000. And if that person said, can you tell me how to set my camera to f-stops and shutter speeds? I'd say, that's a waste of time. Mm-hmm. You can learn that anywhere. Or can you sit down and show me how to do your grungy Joel Grimes look? No. So I got on videos. I got it
Yep.
That is not what I'd spend an hour doing. I'd spend an hour on saying, what is it you want to do? What's your dream? And I can tell you that if you work hard enough, you can get there. I'll give you an example. I don't have it was on my phone, but I have the guy's name. A reason I just keep forgetting names, but I was called into Annenberg Space Photography. I had a part of an exhibit there. It was the Digital Darkroom. Annenberg for Space Photography is out in LA. It's one of the biggest centers of photography now in the world. Wallace Annenberg, with all her money that she had, her dad was a big publisher, and she loved photography, so she set this up, and it's an amazing facility. And I got called into a dinner with her, or a lunch with her with 11 other photographers. And there was Greg Gorman, there was Matthew Ralstein, there was names I read about, and they were all in this room together. And I'm like, why am I here, right? But I'm sitting there, and I was introducing myself to the people around me, and the guy next to me was a photojournalist, and I can't remember his name right now. I'm just feel stupid, but the guy across from me said, well, he's not just any photojournalist. He's a Pulitzer Prize winning photojournalist. I said, wow. And I'm kind of joking. I said, there, can I touch you? And I said, how'd you get started? He said, well, my parents were immigrants from Mexico, and I lived in LA, and I wanted to be a photojournalist. And I went through the ranks, got my degree. And he said, my goal was to work for the LA Times. And he said, I went to show my portfolio to the photo editor first time. And he said, I was like, right out of college. So he said, I didn't have major expectations, but the photo editor said, "You're not ready." And he said, "Well, can I go out and shoot stuff and come back and show it?" And he said, "Absolutely." So he went out, shot more stuff, came back. And he said, "You're not ready." And he said, "It took me 33 times of rejection before I got my first assignment." And then now he's a Pulitzer Prize winning photojournalist. So it's, how bad do you want your dream? How bad do you want to get to the end result where you want to be? I say this. I do a whole thing on marketing. I talk about the power of 8. I've practiced this over and over. There is, in my mind, I say, there's not a door I can't get in.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I know that is because it's a very simple principle. And if once you understand this principle, you can achieve anything you want. And it sounds crazy. And I don't want to give it all away because I want you to come to my academy and pay for it. No, I'm just kidding. No, I give it all away all the time. I talk about the power of 8. The thing that I say is it's a magical formula. It's like sprinkling magic dust on somebody. That is this. If you're in a position, like you're a photo editor, or you're an art director, art buyer, whatever it is, you're a client, a marketing director at some hospital that does photography, or hires photography. So I'm the photographer. You're the person I want to win over.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you're sitting in the castle, so to speak. And
Yep.
I'm down here, the peon, the peasant, wanting to get in the doors to get up to your level. And that's how I feel, right? Because when I'm like, they don't have time for me. I'm the peon, right?
And that's what every listener is thinking.
Yes.
Is
right.
I'm not worthy enough to
Exactly.
even have
Yeah.
this conversation.
Am I good enough? Am I, whatever.
Mhm.
Okay. And so when I look at that, it's like the Grand Canyon. I have to jump across the Grand Canyon. Physically, it's impossible for me to do that. So I think it's almost impossible for me. So I'm psyched out before I even start. But I'm nervous. And so, but if I get the name, so when I make my cold calls, I never get that person on the phone. I say, I'd like to get the name of the person who's in charge of hiring photographers, the marketing director, whoever it is, photo editor, whatever. Sometimes it's not the photo editor, it's the assistant photo editor that does the actual day-to-day, meeting photographers. So I say, who's that person? I get that name. When I get that name, I'm like, ching, ching. I know that's money in the bank right there. That's achieving what I want. How do I know that? Because I call it the power of 8, but it's really very simple. That is this. Every person that's in a buying role is no different than you. Okay. They have a boss. Well, you may not have a boss, you're self-employed, but let's just say, if as a generally, I have a client that's a boss in a way, but I have someone I have to win over by my performance. I have deadlines.
Mm-hmm.
I have budgets, restraints. I'm married and I got a 2-year-old that's teething, so I'm not sleeping very well through the night. Or I just went through a divorce, or my dad just passed away, or I just had a accident and I'm in a cast. Whatever. There's 1,000 things that are going along with that person that happened to you too. I mean, or potentially could happen to you. They're human just like you.
Yep.
They have life, and they have struggles just like you have struggles. They also have something that you have. That is the inability to remember names. Like I said, I couldn't remember that one guy's name, but you can't remember names very well, right? And they've done studies and they've proven that it takes about 8 times for someone to repeat something to get it in there somewhere in the cobwebs, in the gray matter. And so when you go and let's say you meet someone, or let's say you're at a party, you're at an opening at a gallery, and you meet an art director that, big time, and you say, I'm a photographer and here's my card. And they're like, oh yeah, great to meet you. And you think, oh, I got in. No, you didn't. That's one.
Yep.
Right. And so what I've learned is that 1, 2, 3, 4 probably doesn't going to work. 8 usually works, at least 8. And sometimes it's 15, 30, or 33, right? Mm-hmm. But the fact is I know that eventually, if I go and present myself to that person who's in that buying position enough times, something's going to happen. And there's only 2 ways you really get in the door. One is you are so freaking amazing as a photographer that when they see your work, they literally pass out.
They turn the table over.
Yes. And they're like, when are you available? Right? Well, I'm not that good. Right? And so there's only one way to get in. And that is when that art director, that art buyer, that photo editor has a crisis. It's the only other way to get in the door. Now, here's how that works. I've made thousands and thousands of cold calls
Mm-hmm.
in my career. I've showed my portfolio thousands of times. And I've learned a pattern, and that is that there's a couple things. But if I present myself to someone, and let's say I'm qualified, I'm not a bad photographer, maybe not the best in town, but I'm qualified. I could do whatever they need. Basic
You
needs.
meet the qualifications.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're not going to hire me because they've already got 3 or 4 photographers that they use on a regular basis. They're happy, and they're not going to take a risk on me. Why would they take a risk on me? When they got Billy Bob, they got, Alfred, Susan, whatever. They've already got their little, there's no way they're going to go and take a risk on someone because their boss, they have to please their boss or their client, right? And so here's what happens. I know something that most people on the planet don't know. I know because as a photographer, I have to hire assistants. And I remember this happening to me. I went to hire an assistant, and I knew I had a shoot, and I had, my typical assistant. Well, I called him up, and I waited till the last minute, right? I called him up, and he said, I'm booked. Oh. So I called my number 2 person, booked. Number 3, I'm on vacation. Number 4, my wife's having a baby. Number 5, it's like I'm going through my list. I had 10 names that I used, and I got down to the 10th name, and they were booked. And I remember thinking, oh, that person from college that graduated keeps calling me to be an assistant. I don't know who they are. And now I am so desperate. All I need is a body that has a pulse.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. I need a body tomorrow with a pulse. And so I go and I take the risk on this new person I've never used. No one's even referred them to me, nothing. And so that's how I get in the door. So here's what I do know. Take any buyer, any art director, any photo editor, whatever, in a given year, they're going to have a crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Their typical standard photographers are going to be booked. Something's going to happen, and they're going to be booked, and they're going to be in a crisis, and they need to fill a slot, and their boss is screaming at them, do you have a photographer for next Tuesday? And they go, no, but Joel Grimes. Wait, I know that name. He's good. I know he's good. Why? It's in there somehow, got in my brain. And so they give me a call. I have worked for when I was in Denver, every ad agency I knocked on the door, I got in. Every client I wanted to go, I got in. I would tell you right now, without ever even with one slight shadow of doubt, that if I wanted to get into National Geographic and do an article or project with National Geographic, I could do it. It may take 2 or 3 years, but I could do it. All I know is that eventually I'm going to wear down or get my name in their brain, and they're going to have a crisis, and they're going to need to fill a slot.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be there for them. And so that gives me confidence. It's not my ability as a photographer necessarily. I do work on that. I get better and better all the time, hopefully. But it's that ability I know that I can get in the door. And I built my whole career on that. And so when someone comes up to me and says, I don't have any work, I go, well, it's because you haven't put your name in the brain of the right person that hires you. That's why.
The part to unpack from this is the work, being able to do the work is just the minimum viable requirement, and everyone meets that minimum viable requirement. And that there's 2 sides to that coin. One is, oh wow, okay, so I could do that. That feels good. But the other side is, now if you don't do it, everything else is your fault, because you're not the one who is out there working harder. You're not the one who is out there building that relationship. You're not the one who is trying to get into their mind. I had an instance with a client that I was trying to pursue as a magazine, and I was sending them a new piece of marketing collateral every single month. And it was a physical mailer. And then I'm following that up with emails, voice messaging, and I'm 8 months in, I'm just not getting through. And I'm just like, oh, this is frustrating me. And I'm looking at, I follow the photo editor on Instagram. I'm looking at her Instagram, and she had posted a photo of her working late one night, and she's at her desk, and there's one thing tacked to the wall behind her. And I'm just like, huh. And something about it was like, what
it was
is
your
this?
work?
It was my work.
Oh, that's
it was
great.
one of
That's
the it was one of the marketing materials I sent her. In fact, it was the first one I sent her.
Wow.
So it's been on her wall for 8 months, 9 months. I've heard nothing from her, but yet my work is the only thing by her desk for 8 months. And eventually I was hired.
That's right.
But that was that light bulb moment for me. It's like, I haven't earned the attention yet. Like
right.
I'm getting
well,
there.
the crisis wasn't there to where she needed to take a risk and then put you in the slot. I've done that where I've met I've run into a photographer and they go, I just saw art director so and so, and I'm really pissed. I'm like, what happened? Because your work is tacked to her wall, not mine, and so I'm like, really? I haven't worked for her yet, but I know eventually I did. And so, yeah, with time, it's going to happen. But here's the weird thing about it. My son, Ben, he's in LA and he wants to do car stuff, car shoots. And then he's doing his video stuff or the film stuff they're doing too. But he loves doing that. And so he had a really bad week. He rented a car and he shot it. And then when he delivered it, they said there was a little scratch underneath the front. And he didn't take pictures of, like with his iPhone to make sure, just in case he can go back and say, no, that was already there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's $1,000 out of his pocket. Then he had a tree fall in his car, brand new car, fall, big dents across the hood. Then he had a couple things happen. And he was like, he called me. He's like, I'm having a bad week, blah, blah, blah. I said, Ben, here's the deal. There's only a few people at the top. And the reason why they're at the top is they don't let the bad days get them down.
Mm-hmm.
They don't let it force them to, or at least say, I'm done. Because he's like, I don't know this car thing, all discouraged. I'm like, there's only a few at the top because they don't let the circumstances beat them down. And so that's why you need to be setting a big time goal. You set it out. You say, I want to work for National Geographic, or I want to work for this magazine, or I want to do a coffee table book, or whatever it is. I want to be in this gallery. And you set the goal and you say, okay, here's the path. And now there's going to be a lot of discouragement along the way. But you say, nope, it's not going to get me down. I'm not going to let it go down. And knowing that with every, let's just say there's 60 things that could keep you from stealing, or that will steal your dream, that most people will drop out at about 10. After 10 discouragements, they're done. And then a few, keep going. But it's like you finally get to that end because you were able to persevere.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the beauty of stepping back at a career like I've had for 40 years, knowing that I got here not because I was the most talented, but I had the most, I guess, tenacity to stick with it, and the confidence that if I worked hard enough, I could get there. And so it's a beautiful thing. Now, that's why I like sharing it with other people, is because if I believe talent was the secret to making it to success, then I would say, well, there's only about 3% of you out there that really can make it. Well, that's not a very good odds, right? Do you know that only 10% of students graduating with a degree in photography work in their field?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, 10%. Actually, it's, I looked it up, but now it's just like 11%. So things are looking better. But
we're on the upswing.
Yeah. So it's basically a 90% failure rate. And the reason is because schools don't prepare you for the real world.
Oh my God, they do not.
No. And so really this is a false advertising, right? Though I love school, I went to college, I love that experience and everything. But the fact is in the real world, it takes what they call the rat-like cunning ability to keep on going. And they don't teach you that in school. And so when I go to schools and I talk to them, usually it's a graduating class, I don't paint what I call the real picture. The real picture is it's nasty.
Mm-hmm.
But you can do it.
Yeah.
You can make it. It's a dog eat dog world, but you can get there if you go, because the chances are 90% of the people in this room are going to quit.
Mm-hmm.
Don't quit.
A couple years ago, I was asked to give an expert testimony on a state education hearing about funding for the arts programs, particularly photography, for high schools in Arizona. And what they were trying to do is they were trying to qualify for a certain grant. Now, the language in the grant, one of the stipulations was that the courses will teach them invaluable skills in life, that they can apply to really anything they want to do, which I believe arts do. I truly believe that. Or is that there's a certification they can get which would make them employable. And so I'm sitting in this room and there's about 40 high school art teachers or photography teachers, and they're hooked on this certification. They're like, well, what if we did a Photoshop certification? What if we did this InDesign certification? What if we did a Lightroom certification? I'm like, time out. Like, one, having that certification is not going to get anyone in any door whatsoever. Why are we not talking about like the amazing amount of jobs someone can have with an education photography? Because it's not just being a photographer. You could be an art director, a photo editor, a retoucher. It enhances your understanding of graphic layout. It understands your color, light. Like there's so much you can do. You can get into education. There's so much you can do with an understanding of photography. And everyone's like, yeah, you're right. And then someone's like, but what about the certification? And then it just went back downhill. And I got the worst migraine ever having to be a part of that. But it's interesting because the technique only gets you so far. And as we've kind of discussed a few times on this, you can learn the technique and you can continue to learn the technique and develop the technique and apply the technique. But it's that second part of it. It's that other facet. It's the building relationships. It's the hustle. That's what brings the work in the door. And when I used to be on the board of ASMP in Tucson. And I had to walk away from it because I'd seen these board meetings and it's just a bunch of people complaining about how the industry's changed and clients aren't paying what they used to and someone underbid them. I'm like, yeah, but I feel like the industry's always been changing and you used to always be changing with it. And at some point you didn't want to change anymore and everything else just kept changing. Yeah. And that doesn't seem to be the case for you. You are constantly adapting, constantly evolving yourself. So I'm curious, we've been talking about goals. Like what are the big goals you have right now for yourself and what it is that you're curious about?
Well, I think that there's a couple seasons as a photographer, entrepreneur, self-employed person as you go through life. So when you're in your 20s, nobody takes you seriously. You barely can pay your bills. You can't even hardly eat. And by the time you're 30s, I got married at 30. So then I had a responsibility. We started having kids and stuff. But I took every job that came in the door. I mean, literally, I was in Denver. They say, hey, we need a CEO photograph. Yeah, out the door. I was, I did everything. We have hats. We want to shoot on a gray sweep. Absolutely. Products, and I hated shooting products. But anyways, I did everything just because I had to make a living, right? Mm-hmm. And then by the time I got into my 40s, I was starting to really pick my stuff. I started getting big ad campaigns and stuff. And I started traveling around the world. And I started being able to say no. And that was like a revelation.
Huge.
Saying, no, I don't want to do that. I hate photographing food or whatever it is, And then by the time you're in your 50s, you better have figured it out because, you're getting at the, I would say, you're on the downhill slope a little bit. But it was when I was 50 when I reinvented myself. And that's when I did that kind of edgy portrait stuff. And I said, I'm not done yet. And now I'm 60, okay, or 61. And so at 61, Russell Brown at Adobe, he's one of their, I guess you'd call, or almost one of the original Adobe employees. Been around from day one. He's their ambassador, not ambassador. They call it evangelist, Adobe evangelist. He said, "Oh, you're turning 60? From here on out, you only do what's fun." And I thought about that. And I said, "Yeah, you have to get to a point where if it's not fun, if I'm not really enjoying it, forget it, because I don't care about the money anymore." We all know that you can have everything and be miserable, right? So it's not about the money anymore. And if I live in a trailer and I'm doing what I love, that's all that matters. All I need is a roof over my head, keep me warm, keep me dry, and I have a shower. That's all I care about. And then go out and have fun. So I'm really starting to shift gears in that, because we have to do stuff that's not fun. Just the taxes and accounting part. Amy does that for me, my wife. But there's a lot of work you have to do to be self-employed. But at some point, it has to be fun. Otherwise, it's not worth it for me anymore. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where I'm at now. And that opens up some really fun doors or interesting doors for me because there's two ways to approach a marketplace. And as a photographer, one is you look at the marketplace and you say, okay, there's Hewlett Packard, and you look at their images. I could do that. I can shoot that, product on that slate of, marble and whatever it is and do that cool look. I could do that, right? Or you look at sports stuff and you say, I like that look. I could do that. So you go out and you get some models and you copy the look that your potential client might need. Mm-hmm. And that's not a bad way to approach the marketplace. There's a huge problem with that. And that is that pretty much every other aggressive photographer is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
They're looking at the marketplace going, oh, that's a cool look. I'm going to go do that. And I did that for years. And then it was 10 years ago, 11 years ago that I said, I am going to create a look that I like, that fits me. And then I'm going to put it out in the marketplace and see what happens. And Amy and I were driving down, this is about 4 years ago. We were driving down LA, Wilshire Boulevard, and we're just looking up, and there's all these billboards. It's kind of like big strip, like almost like Las Vegas strip, just billboards, the latest, everything. Every single ad was the 3 light, 2 edge light, 1 light overhead look. And Amy's like, that's your look. And I go, yeah. And I'm not the first to ever do it, but I was the first to put it in the marketplace. I was the first to beat it in the ground to where it took off into this like frenzy of photographers. And there's most photographers that probably are shooting those ads. They don't even know where that look came from. But the point is how did I get that look? I did a look that I liked. And then I put it out there. And then that's what I got known for. And so there's a greater risk in doing that, but the payoff is much bigger because now you stand out in the marketplace. And art director's going, we want this. I had this gal call me up, art director, big agency. She says, is this Joel Grimes? I said, yeah. She goes, kind of an interesting thing just happened. I had a meeting with, we had, a photographer and the production team and everything. And we're looking at this campaign, the sports campaign we're doing. And the photographer brought in some samples and he kept referring to the Joel Grimes look, this Joel Grimes, edgy look. And he had a bunch of your work that he was using as examples. Accomplished photographer, but still saying, this is the look I think we should do. And she's like, I'm calling you up because I want the real Joel Grimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that campaign for her. I felt really guilty for that poor photographer. But it's like that's when I realized I had arrived.
Yeah. I would never, but here's the thing. I would not want to be the photographer saying, hire me to shoot this other photographer style. I would not want to be that person because what does that say about me as an artist?
That's right.
I've been compared by a photo editor. I've been compared to another photographer one time, and thank God it wasn't based on my style. Thank God, because that would have like mortified me. Yeah. It was based on the tenacity, right. And that I took as a compliment. That's when I sat down to me and like, oh, do you know so and so? I was like, I do know that person. Like, yeah, he comes in a lot too. I'm like, good. Because now I'm going to come in a lot.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Because he just lit that fire, and I'm happy to be compared that way.
But it's nice to be in a position where you are at the you're at the what do they call it, the power curve? I mean, when you're in an airplane, you better have the power. The power will be behind you. You're not in a situation where you're stalling out, right? Mm-hmm. And you're heading into the woods. But so I would say to people that if you're in your 20s, you probably don't necessarily want to go try to rock the world with some new lighting technique or whatever. You got to at least pay your bills. You get to that, you get through the ranks a little bit. There's some point in your career you're going to say, you know what, I am willing now to take the risk and go and build a body work that does a crazy look, and I'm going to put it out in the marketplace. And the payoff would be huge. But I think in the beginning it's kind of hard to do that. And again, because you just got to eat. Yeah. You just got to eat.
And the thing is, we've all been there, and we've all had to go through that. Yeah. Joel, I can't thank you enough for being a part of this show and for sharing just such a wealth of experience and knowledge. Where can people go to learn more about you and more about the programs you're working on right now?
Well, so what I call my commercial website, joelgrimes.com. Mm-hmm. And then I have Joel Grimes Workshops, that's .com has been my blog for years. And there you can get to the Joel Grimes Academy, where I have a ton of tutorials. I spent 10 months recording tutorials and putting them up there. And I've covered a lot of what we're talking about now. I'm from, copyright to, how to put a bid in.
Huge.
What about budgets? Do you want someone to give you a budget? Or do you want not know the budget, right? Mm-hmm. So there's two pros and cons to that.
That's an interesting question.
Yeah, it is. And so I cover all these things that I've gone through over the years in the marketplace, and I pass that on, and hopefully people can. When I say shortcut, they can learn from my experience. But once again, they got to pick up, and I always say, put the potato chips down, get off the couch, and go out and create.
I love that.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Joel, thank you again so much. And thank you guys, listeners, for tuning in to Beyond the Image. Thank you for sharing this with a friend, and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to Beyond the Image. For more information on James Patrick's work and live events, please visit jamespatrick.com or jamespatrickworkshops.com.